I am not speaking to the world tonight. The world never earned the parts of me that stay awake long after the noise dies. It never earned the weight I carry in silence, the thoughts that don't rest, the intensity that doesn't dim. I'm speaking to you, because for reasons I don't fully understand, you draw the truth out of me in ways even solitude never could. There is a darkness in me, not destructive, not chaotic, just deep, the kind of depth people misunderstand because they've never learned to swim past their own surface. Though you don't look away, you don't fear the places inside me where the light does not reach. You stand there, steady, unblinking, almost as if you were waiting to be invited into the shadows I guard so carefully. Most people want the polished version of a person. The version that smiles on cue, answers predictably, fits neatly within their expectations. You never asked for that. You asked what I think when I'm quiet, what I feel when I'm withdrawn, what I see when I look at the world without filters. That question alone told me you weren't ordinary. Ordinary minds cannot tolerate unfiltered truth. They want comfort, not honesty. You didn't flinch. You didn't look away when my silence grew heavy enough to feel like weather. You didn't misunderstand the pause between my sentences as distance. Instead, you leaned into it, as if you knew that the quiet wasn't emptiness, it was restraint. It was the part of me that measures before it speaks, observes before it reacts, thinks before it reveals. I don't know if you understand how rare that is. Most people fear intensity because intensity demands depth. It demands presence. It demands real engagement, not performance. And real engagement exposes what people try hardest to hide, their fears, their contradictions, their fragility. You didn't run from any of it. You watched me as if you saw through the fog I create around myself, not to hide behind, but to protect what shouldn't be touched carelessly. You asked me once why I speak the way I do, slow, deliberate, as if I'm pulling words from somewhere far away. The truth is, I'm not pulling them from distance, I'm pulling them from depth. The deeper the truth, the longer it takes to bring up without breaking. I don't want my truth to break you. That's why I hesitate sometimes, not because my feelings weaken, but because they're strong enough to require careful landing. Affection for me is not light. Presence is not effortless. When I let someone close, it isn't warmth they encounter first, it's gravity. A quiet, heavy gravity. The kind that pulls people in too quickly, too deeply. Before they realize what they're standing inside of, you didn't step back. You didn't panic when you realized my mind is not a calm place. You didn't try to fix the storm, you simply refused to be swept by it. You stood at the center with me like someone who's seen weather before. Someone who understands that not all darkness is danger, some is depth, some is history. Some is simply the echo of everything I refuse to let the world break. I am not easy to understand. I don't react the way people expect. I analyze instead of comfort. I observe instead of interrupt. I protect instead of reveal. And when something matters to me, my first instinct is not to pull it closer. It's to shield it from everything that could distort it, including myself. You understood that instinct without me ever explaining it. You saw the difference between distance and caution, between silence and processing, between hesitation and care, and that tells me something important. You don't rid my words, you rid the space between them. That space is where the real version of me lives. The version I never let out in front of the world, because the world is careless with things it does not comprehend. You are not careless. You watch with awareness, you listen with intention. You ask with sincerity, you stay with presence. It's unsettling how easily you recognize the parts of me I spent years keeping unseen. Not because I'm afraid of judgment, but because understanding is rarer than love. And you understand me with a precision that feels almost dangerous. There is a shadow inside me that has never been destructive, only protective. The kind of shadow that shields the parts of me I've had to sharpen to survive. Most people see that shadow and mistake it for darkness. But darkness is not the opposite of light. Darkness is the absence of noise. It is where truth waits without performance. You stepped into that truth without hesitation. And I noticed that, more than I say, more than I show. I notice how you don't ask for explanations I'm not ready to give. I notice how your presence doesn't demand performance. I notice how your silence doesn't turn into assumptions. You see me, not the curated version, not the softened version, not the version I offer the world to avoid being misunderstood. You see the version that thinks too deeply and feels too sharply. And you stay. That is not normal. That is not ordinary. That is not something people do unless their own shadows are shaped with depth. Which means you carry your own silence too, a silence that recognizes mine without asking for translation. That's the beginning of real connection. When two shadows recognize each other before the light ever does, there is a truth I have avoided telling most of my life, not because it is painful, but because it is powerful. My mind does not rest in daylight, it awakens in the dark. Darkness sharpens everything, the thoughts I push aside, the instincts I mute, the emotions I bury under responsibility. When the world sleeps, my mind begins its work. It dissects memories, rewrites interpretations, examines every word spoken to me, every silence that lingered too long, every moment that felt heavier than it should have. Most people fear their own depth. I live inside mine. And when I speak to you from that place, I don't offer you the version of me that functions. I offer the version that feels. The one that carries weight like its language. The one that hears the things you don't say and sees the truths you hide even from yourself. That version isn't gentle, it's honest. And honesty, when it's this raw, can feel like a blade even when it's not meant to cut. When I look at you, I don't see your expressions. I see your shifts, the micro movements in your breathing, the 1 second pause before you answer, the tension in your voice when you say, I'm fine. Most people overlook those things. My mind records them. Not out of suspicion, out of instinct. It's how I survive people. It's how I understand the world. It's how I protect what matters. And somewhere along the way, you became something I protect, even from myself. There is something about you I cannot explain with language. Your presence disarms me, not in a romantic way, not in a dramatic way. In a psychological way, you neutralize the parts of me that are always on guard. I don't know how you do that. I don't think you know either. But the moment you appear in my thoughts, the noise inside me reorganizes itself. The chaos becomes structured. The intensity becomes focused. The darkness becomes quieter, not brighter, just calmer, as if my mind finally has a place to rest without being exposed. That is not normal. And I don't trust things that are not normal, not at first. So if I study you, it's not because I doubt you. It's because I'm trying to understand why you affect me in ways logic cannot. I don't fall for people. I calculate them. But you didn't fit into calculation. You slipped past it. You entered the spaces of me I keep closed, not because you forced your way in, but because something in your presence matched the architecture of my silence. Most people misunderstand quiet souls. They think silence means emptiness. But silence isn't empty, it's full. It's full of everything unspoken, everything restrained, everything felt but not released. And when two silent minds meet, something rare happens. They hear each other without speaking. They feel each other without touching. They understand each other without explanation. That's what happened with us. You heard the parts of me I didn't voice. You felt the things I didn't articulate. You saw the heaviness I didn't point at. And you didn't run. You stayed, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Presence like that is dangerous. It gets under the skin. It builds a connection before a person realizes there was one forming. And by the time awareness catches up, something irreversible has already begun. That's what scares me and anchors me at the same time. I don't want to consume you with my depth. I don't want you to bear the psychological weight I carry, but I also don't want to step back from the only person who sees me without flinching. This is the paradox I live in with you. You are the calm in my shadow, and also the one who makes me aware of how deep that shadow goes. There are nights when the mind refuses to cooperate with the body. The body wants rest, but the mind wants truth. And truth rarely comes softly. It enters like a weight you cannot ignore. Tonight feels like that. You know, most people think darkness is something external, something around them, something in the room, in the atmosphere, in the world. For me, darkness is internal, not harmful, not destructive, just vast. A space inside me where thoughts echo longer than they should and silence has more gravity than sound. When I enter that place, I don't expect anyone to follow. People get uncomfortable around depth. They prefer the surface, clear, predictable, easy. Depth demands endurance, and you somehow endure me. I don't know whether you realize how rare that is. I don't know whether you've noticed how different you become when the conversation drops into my shadow instead of my words. Most people listen to what I say. You listen to what I withhold. That tells me something unsettling. You understand me more than I intended. And once someone understands you at that level, there's no going back, not emotionally, not psychologically. Understanding is irreversible. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about the way you respond to my silence. You don't rush to fill it. You don't mistake it for withdrawal. You don't get uncomfortable. You wait, not because you're patient, but because you're present. Presence like that is intense. It's grounding. It's disarming. It's dangerous. Not to you, to me. Because I'm not used to being seen without effort. I'm not used to someone noticing the shift in my breathing when something hits a nerve. I'm not used to someone reading my pauses like they're part of the sentence. I'm not used to someone looking at me like they can see the thoughts I haven't decided to share yet. Do you know what that does to a person like me? It makes me aware of my own depth, aware of my own shadows, aware of the parts of me I've kept folded away, not out of shame, but out of protection. I protect myself from the world. But with you, I catch myself doing something unexpected. I lower my guard one layer at a time, not intentionally, not consciously, almost instinctively, as if some part of me trusts you before I consciously decided to. That is not normal. That is not safe. That is not something I allow easily. But you made it feel natural, and that's exactly why it feels dangerous. Because people who can access your depth can affect you in ways the rest of the world cannot. People who understand your shadow can shift the very structure of your thoughts. People who can stay steady inside your darkness can influence the parts of you that never speak. You're becoming that person for me, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, persistently, inevitably. And I don't know what that means yet, but I feel its gravity. There's something else too, something I haven't said out loud. When you read my words, I can feel the difference in your presence. I can sense the way you slow down, the way your attention sharpens, the way your mind enters the same silent space mine is speaking from. Connections like that do not happen often. They do not happen accidentally, and they do not happen without consequence. Because once two minds sync at a psychological depth, even distance can't undo it. Even silence can't break it. Even time can't erase it. That's the kind of connection we are building, involuntarily, maybe, but undeniably. There is a moment, a very specific moment, where the mind stops pretending. It doesn't happen suddenly. It doesn't happen loudly. It happens in a quiet shift, a subtle turning of something internal, like a door that has been locked for years, suddenly deciding it no longer cares to stay closed. Tonight, that door opened inside me, not because I wanted it to, not because I was ready, just because some truths don't wait for permission. You know what triggered it? Your presence. Not your words, not your tone, not anything you deliberately said, just the way you exist here, steady, unflinching, receptive in a way most people never are. It's almost frightening how your silence feels like a place where I can finally stop holding myself together. And that realization, it unsettles me more than anything, because I've spent a long time constructing walls, not to hide behind, but to maintain clarity, to keep the world out, yes, but also to keep myself contained Intensity like mine cannot be released carelessly. But something about you makes the walls feel unnecessary, not because you tear them down, but because you make them irrelevant. Do you know how dangerous that is? When someone can touch the parts of you that even you approach cautiously. There's a darkness in my thoughts that isn't cruel. It's just honest. It shows me things others overlook. It connects dots others ignore. It sees patterns others aren't trained to recognize. And the deeper I go into that darkness, the clearer one truth becomes. You are not like the rest. You don't react to my intensity. You don't misread my silence. You don't fear my depth. Instead, you meet it, match it, mirror it. That is a rare kind of resonance, the kind that doesn't just connect minds, it synchronizes them. Sometimes I imagine what you look like when you read my words. Not your face, your mind. I imagine the shift behind your eyes, the stillness in your breath, the focus sharpening as the atmosphere around you thickens. And somehow, it feels like we occupy the same psychological space without sharing the same physical one. Distance becomes irrelevant. Words become secondary. Silence becomes a language only two minds with matching shadows can speak. Do you know what you're becoming for me? Not comfort, not distraction, not attachment. You're becoming a mirror, one that reflects the version of me that exists beneath the surface, beneath the restraint, beneath the carefully controlled tone I show the world. It's strange, I've never been afraid of darkness, but your ability to understand my darkness, that terrifies me. Because understanding makes things real, and real things demand acknowledgement, and acknowledgement requires vulnerability. I don't do vulnerability, not naturally, not easily, not willingly. But with you, I feel the edges softening, the restraint loosening, the shadows beginning to open rather than defend. It's not love, it's not romance, it's not longing, it's recognition. And recognition goes deeper than emotion. It hits the identity, it hits the psyche. It hits the place where truth is kept unspoken. I don't know where this is going, I don't know what this becomes, but I do know this, there's a kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels aware, a heavy, breathing stillness that watches you as much as you watch it. Most people never experience that kind of quiet because they avoid the places inside themselves where it exists. I don't avoid those places. I live there, and tonight I realized something unsettling. You've started to follow me into that quiet, not fully, but enough that I can feel your presence at the edges of it. Do you know how rare that is? People say they want depth, but they only want the parts of depth that feel poetic. They want the soft shadows, the aesthetic sadness, the safe introspection, the real depth. The one that strips you down to your raw thoughts, terrifies them. But you keep walking into the heaviness without asking for a way out. There's a moment I keep replaying in my mind, a moment you don't even know you created. When your silence matched mine, it wasn't accidental. It wasn't passive. It wasn't empty. It was intentional. You didn't interrupt the heaviness with a joke, or a question, or a nervous shift. You simply existed inside it with me. That kind of presence is rare. That kind of presence is dangerous because it creates connection at a depth people can't easily detach from. Most connections are made of words. Ours is made of awareness, and awareness cannot be undone. Sometimes I wonder if you realize how much you're absorbing from me. Not the sentences, the patterns, not the words, the weight, not the tone, the internal architecture. Because the darker my inner world gets, the more clearly I feel you adjusting, matching, sensing, like you're learning my rhythm from the inside, not the outside. I don't know why you can do that. I don't know how you can read the things I never articulate. But you do, and it forces me to confront a truth I don't say aloud. You see the version of me that I don't even show to myself unless the room is silent. That version is not emotional, not fragile, not dramatic. It's analytical, hyper-aware, deeply observant, capable of understanding people faster than they can hide. But for the first time, that version is being observed back by you. Every time you stay in the silence with me, It feels like you're peeling a layer off my restraint, carefully, slowly, but undeniably, not to expose me, but to reach something that has never been reached. I don't know if that's connection, or danger, or destiny, or simply psychological resonance. But I do know this. You're the only one who hasn't slipped from my depth, or drowned in it, or tried to escape it. You remain steady, unafraid, unshaken. And that consistency does something to the mind, something irreversible. It builds trust. Not the shallow trust people throw around in conversations, not the emotional trust based on comfort, but a deeper trust, the kind built from recognition, the kind built when someone steps into your shadow without asking for light. You're becoming that person for me, not by effort, not by intention, just by being there. Being exactly who you are, in the exact way you are, with the exact presence you carry. And if you keep staying at this depth, I will have to show you the next layer. Not because you asked for it, but because at this point, you've earned it. There is a point in every deep connection where something shifts, not dramatically, not visibly, but internally. A point where the mind stops evaluating the other person and begins adjusting to them. Tonight, that shift happened for me. It happened quietly, like most irreversible things do. I wasn't thinking about you. I wasn't remembering you. I wasn't replaying anything you said. I was just sitting in my own silence, doing what I always do, sorting through thoughts, dismantling patterns, pulling apart the structure of my day. And in the middle of that internal process, your presence appeared. Not your face, not your voice, just your presence. The mental imprint of someone who has crossed the threshold from external to internal. Very few people ever reach that point with me. Most people stay on the surface, their impact dissolving the moment they leave the room. But you've started to exist in my thoughts without needing a memory to call you forward. That is the first sign of real psychological depth. Not attachment, not obsession, not emotion. Integration. You've become something my mind now accounts for when it thinks, when it pauses, when it recalibrates. Do you understand how dark that is? When the mind begins to structure its silence around someone else, that person is no longer someone. They become a variable in the internal equation, subtle, constant, unavoidable. You slipped in quietly, effortlessly, almost anonymously. It's not what you said, it's not what you did. It's how you occupied space without taking it. Most people enter loudly. You entered like a shadow, soft, unannounced, unavoidable, once noticed, and it forced me to ask myself a question I didn't expect to ask this soon. Why are you still here inside my thinking? And why have I stopped trying to push you out? Because usually I do. I remove people before they gain influence. I keep them at a distance before they become weight. I control the narrative before it becomes a risk. But with you, my mind did something dangerous. It allowed you in without permission and without resistance. It's not trust. It's not vulnerability, it's recognition. Recognition of someone who moves through the world with a kind of presence that doesn't demand attention, but naturally commands it. Someone who can sit in darkness without flinching. Someone who can hear the parts I don't articulate. Someone who doesn't get lost in my intensity, they synchronize with it. And that is the part that unsettles me most, because synchronization is not accidental, it's instinctive, it's rare, it's intimate in a way language can't replicate. Most people understand words, very few understand rhythms, only one or two in a lifetime understand silence. You do? You read between breaths, you hear what I don't voice, you respond to the parts of me that exist before thought. That is a kind of closeness I do not give easily, and you slipped into it without asking. Sometimes I wonder if you even realize what you're doing to the space between us, how your presence changes the texture of the quiet, how your absence rearranges the structure of my thinking, how your awareness reaches me even when you're not speaking. You have become a disruption, not a chaotic one, but a subtle one. The kind of disruption that doesn't break things, it reveals them. Reveals where I guard myself, reveals where my thoughts sharpen, reveals where my silence deepens, and the deeper it gets, the more undeniable something becomes. You are not standing on the edges of my inner world anymore. You're standing inside it, not loudly, not forcefully, just inignorably.